We're talking today with Jerry Kloostra of Wyoming, Michigan. The interviewer is James Smither of the Grand Valley State University Veterans History Project. Okay, so Jerry, let's begin at the beginning. Where and when were you born?
Grand Rapids, 1940. I was a war baby.
All right. And was your father in the service at that point?
Yes, he was. Well, he went in a couple years after that.
Okay.
But yes, he was in the Navy.
All right. And what did he do in the Navy?
He was on a supply ship north of Australia.
Okay. All right. And so and basically he spent the whole war on that same ship?
Yes, he did. Yes, he did. I can remember the times when he'd come into California, and my mother would go from Michigan to California on the run to say hello.
All right. But you basically didn't see him from when he left until he got out of the service?
No, he came home a couple times.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Because I guess if he's on a supply ship, maybe he goes back and forth and comes to the States once in a while.
Yeah, right.
So they can
right,
do that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So you're really too young to understand too much about the war, because all of that and so forth. And then, did you finish high school?
Yes.
And when did you graduate?
58, Union High School.
Okay. And what did you do after you graduated?
I was wondering what to do next. My friends in high school all took college prep courses. They were gone, and I was just sitting there. What am I going to do with my life? What am I going to do with my life? And I had a brother who was ahead of me in the Navy, and he said to me, he says, "I got the best job in the Navy. I got the best job in the Navy." I said, "Okay, what's the best job in the Navy?" He says, "I'm on an aircraft carrier." He says, we see every plane taking off, every plane coming in, and we work up on the bridge right behind the captain's crew. He says, "Just the best job in the Navy." So I said, and I knew I had to do something with my life, so I said, how could I get a job like that? So we figured out how I could get a job like that. The Navy would let brothers come together if it wasn't a hot war, and it wasn't. It was just before Vietnam. So he said, put in for duty with your brother, and that paperwork will get you to this ship. When you get to this ship, look for this man and tell them who you are and ask them for the job. So I actually did that. It was interesting when I was walking out on pier. Here, I'm a rookie, clueless, and I've been through training at Great Lakes and carrying my sea bag, and they said, your ship is on Pier 12. I'm walking out Pier 12. It looks like a 4-lane highway, and it even has railroad tracks to push trains up there. And so I'm walking out there on that pier, and I can't find an aircraft carrier. I'm just walking by the steel warehouse. I got to get out there to find it. The steel warehouse was the aircraft carrier.
All right. So let's back up a little bit. So when do you actually enlist?
December of '58.
Okay. And then do you report in January, or do you already go off to Great Lakes before that?
No, I was doing Great Lakes before that.
Okay. All right. Now, so for people who don't know, where is the Great Lakes Naval Training Center?
It's just north of Chicago.
Okay.
And that's where it is, yeah.
All right. And describe a little bit what boot camp there was like.
Boot camp, well, interesting things, but they train you with fire. And so they light an oil fire in a structured cement building to simulate a ship. And so we had to go in there and put it out. And what they were doing, they were teaching us to not be fearful of working in that smoke and how to do best to put it out. So we actually put out fires, that type of thing. A lot of marching. I was a little taller than average, so when we were doing our marching, I was carrying a flag like this and learning how to do that and various other things. I went to the RAN electronic navigation school later, but not there.
Okay. Now, how much emphasis was there on kind of drill and discipline?
Oh, a lot. I mean, that's what all the marchers about. Everybody together, everybody got the same haircut and get going. And an interesting thing is there comes a day where you're going to pack up the clothes you came in. And so you're packing it up so you send it back. But my mother said it wasn't a good feeling when she got that box of clothes.
Mm-hmm. All right. And then what happened if you messed up, if you didn't do things the way the
Oh
girls,
yeah,
people wanted?
they would use peer pressure. Like there was a guy from down south, kind of up in the hills, and he wasn't that concerned about a shower. And if someone's messing up, that puts pressure on the whole company. So the whole company puts pressure on the mess up. So they said we want you guys, you 6 guys, to give Charlie a shower tonight, so he learns the importance of it. So we all had a brush, and Charlie really became a good, cleanly guy after that. But they're just different examples of that happening.
Okay. And how easy or hard was it for you to adjust to sort of life in the military and what they were doing there?
I loved it because it was structured. I could see it was a level playing field. I wanted to do something with my life instead of stay home and get another gas station job.
Mm-hmm.
I figured that out. That's not going to work for this guy. I got to do something.
All right.
So I love the structure.
Okay. And as far as level playing fields go, were all of the trainees in there with you white, or did you have a mix of people?
Oh, there was a mix.
Okay.
But we buddied up fast. We had a goal to get in and get out and do what we had to do. And
Okay. And how long was the boot camp part?
I think it was maybe a couple months.
Okay. And what do you do next?
Okay, well, I was talking to my brother at that time. Well, I knew what I had to do. I had to apply for duty with my brother.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what I did, and that's when it got me to Pier 12 in Norfolk, Virginia.
All right.
And then I went aboard. I did find the 2 guys he told me to look for, and I asked them for the job, and they took me in as a rookie, and I started learning from there.
Okay. So what are they teaching you?
Well, they're teaching there's different duties for quartermaster. One is to keep a log, and so I was doing it like the best I could. And I remember 4 o'clock, I came on duty at 3:45 one morning, and at 4:15, a plane crashed out there in the dark. So that was my first big entry. I had to write the details of that plane crash from a navigation point of view. I didn't have to get into the basic nitty-gritties. But so there's keeping the logs, there's keeping the charts, there's getting a what they call electronic fix. A fix is finding your exact position. So every half hour, we'd get an electronic fix. We take it off this machine and put it on the chart. And just keeping things updated. When the captain needed coffee, we were the guys.
Mm-hmm. All right. So were you physically in the same place that your brother had been, with, like, behind where the captain was, or right by the bridge?
Exactly. It was exactly the same place. And I found out later, well, as I got in there, I started to mature, and I qualified as a master helmsman. And I didn't know it, but my brother had the same thing. And so he was a master helmsman.
Okay. Now, did you and he actually overlap on the ship?
No.
Okay.
No.
So
he says, I won't be here. He said, but the paperwork will get you here.
Okay.
And so then do your thing, and I did. And yeah. And it was interesting when you get it. The ship is so vast on the inside, and I was embarrassed because I couldn't find they call it the mess hall, the chow hall. I couldn't find it. And so if they opened at 12, I'd see 2 guys who were walking with purpose going by me, and I just would follow them. But it was down this deck, down here, around there, over there. So anyway, that's how I navigated through that.
All right. Now, how long did you stay in Norfolk before you went out to sea?
Oh, it was an interesting thing happened. It was just a matter of a few weeks.
Okay.
I had a dental issue on the ship, and so they were checking me out, and then I had an abscess up here, and they said to me, they said, those teeth are dead. I said, what? You know, and they're telling me that they have to come out and take those bones out. And I thought, I don't remember getting hit right here.
Mm-hmm.
But I remembered one time I got hit with a hockey puck. But it wasn't devastating.
Mm-hmm.
But that's what cracked those bones. So the first time going out, I was in surgery, getting all this taken care of. When we were going on, we were underway.
Mm-hmm. All right. Now, how long did that have you laid up?
I was not pretty. The whole side of my face looked like I got hit by a baseball bat. This eye was closed.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, they just kept working me, and then I had to get the dental replacements for this. So I had to heal up first.
Mm-hmm.
But so, you know, it took some time, but it didn't stop me from moving.
Okay. But so do you go back to work while it's healing?
Yeah, but I was probably in sick bay there a couple weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Penicillin.
Yeah. Okay, interesting way to start. All right.
Yes.
Now, what was the ship's mission at that point when you're going out?
The ship had just been converted when Brother Ken was on there. It was called a CVA. The A was for attack, so he had jet planes on it.
Mm-hmm.
But then the Navy realized we have more of a need for anti-submarine, so they switched it over, and then it became CVS for anti-submarine. So then we were hunting submarines with helicopters and fixed wing.
Okay, and describe a little bit what these fixed-wing aircraft look like and how they fit on a carrier.
The jets are compact. They can be compact and they can get them close together. With these planes have big wings, but then they flip those wings up over the top so they can park them close together.
Right.
So those were all set up for, it was called an S2F. It was interesting. One time was, you know, certain sounds you learn in the Navy. And I knew the sound of that S2F engine. And one time over Grand Rapids, I heard an S2F. I knew what it was. I thought, what? How many submarines are they hunting over Grand Rapids, Michigan, right? But for some reason, that S2F was...
Well, maybe they were looking for those, you know, sharks in Lake Michigan.
There you go, something like that.
Or whales. Yeah. Okay. And then, what's distinctive looking about the S2F? I mean, you've got the folding wings, but what else does it
Well,
carry?
there's different models. There's some models that have a dome on top, and that has the radar. But most of them do not have the dome on top, and they drop buoys out the bottom. And then there's a man on the radio in the plane listen to that buoy to see if they're going to pick up any pings out there. Then another way they did the same thing was with helicopters. Helicopters go out and they lower a big, look like a giant basketball. They put that buoy right there, and then they could listen that way too. Mm-hmm. And so we ended up playing war games with our own submarines to sharpen our skills. Mm-hmm. So in this one intense war game kind of, there were 3 submarines we had to identify, and we got one. And once identified, they're neutralized. You know, once we find them, we got one, and then we got the other one. So then we're looking for the third one, and we couldn't find it. It was weird, but we knew he was there. We couldn't find it. Couldn't find it. Where is he? Where is he? He was right underneath us. When we turned, he turned. So anyway, that was kind of interesting.
All right. And how long was that cruise?
Oh, we'd be out there maybe 3 weeks, 4 weeks at a time.
Okay. And how far out did you go? I mean,
We'd go out, just out in the North Atlantic, just, you know, I'm sure the Pentagon would say, you know, work this area, work this area, whatever. Yeah.
But were you getting up where it was cold, or?
No,
Okay.
it was always nice. I just loved being at sea. It was therapeutic.
All right. I mean, did you go through any big storms and things while you were out there?
Oh, yeah. When we got into a storm, they on the bow, from the bridge you could see the bow of the ship. They tied up 3, 6, 9 S2Fs, and they're all chained down. Mm-hmm. And so we're going through this intense storm. And in fact, it was so bad, they were really upset with our meteorological department for not getting us around it. Mm-hmm. And I was up on the bridge, and I heard a giant boom. And I think instinctively I thought it was a wave on the front. because the bow of the aircraft carrier is like this, but then it comes up near the top and it flattens out like that. So there's a flat spot there that's not cutting the waves. But the wave was so big, it's hitting that flat spot and gave a wham. And then I looked out there, and all 9 of those planes were covered with water spray. And then another interesting thing, in the storms, of course, you're not flying any planes. But there's one plane that we would fly, and that was the mail plane, to send them back to Virginia, because that helped keep the morale up on the troops. So we wanted to send this mail plane off. So they're timing these big waves with the deck, and they also wanted to time the seconds it takes from that S2F to get from that spot to the bow. So we're getting. I wasn't doing it, but that's what they were doing on the guys, the officers in front of me. And so they blast him off, and the timing was off. The bow was down. So they send this plane off. You can't stop him once it starts going. Send it off. And I remember seeing that plane. The props were so low across the water, they were blowing water, blasting water back. But he made it. I remember the pilot. The pilot was about a 300-pound guy, and I thought, why did they put that great big guy in the front of that airplane?
I guess he was a good pilot.
He did. He got out of there. So that was safe. But interesting things like that.
Okay. Now you're going to sea. Had you ever been out at sea or on a ship before?
No, not on it. No. So it was wonderful.
Okay. Did you get seasick?
No. On an aircraft carrier, it seems to move as much as this studio.
Mm-hmm.
It's just there.
So even in a storm, you didn't feel like you were moving?
Well, a little bit. That nasty storm, but the destroyers. We had 7 destroyers around us. Those destroyer escorts,
mm-hmm.
and those are the real sailors, because when storms come, they go through the wave with the bow and come out the other side. And they're not serving any meals. They got a few sandwiches because nobody's feeling real good about this assignment. But those are the guys that really take it.
Yeah. And I suppose if you're toward the middle of the aircraft carrier, the bow and stern might go up and down, but you don't move so much.
That's a good point. And that's where the bridge is. It's
Yeah.
in the middle of the island.
All right. Now, describe a little bit just sort of the setup that you worked in and sort of the room you were in and who's in it and who goes in and out.
Okay. The front of the bridge is where all the officers of the deck are, and the captain's chair is over here. And then there's a wall behind them, but the wall has all these little portholes, so you can speak to the steering wheel or the helm is right behind there. Mm-hmm. Then there's also a dashboard there that there's 2 guys on watch with that, but that has all the engine speeds, the rudder angles, and things like that. And there's also another dashboard outside in nice weather, because the officer of the deck can be out there watching what's going on there. So that's what's in it. Then back a little further, there's a place called co-pilot. But that's where we worked with the maps and the charts and electronic navigation, and we'd get the settings. In fact, I think it affected my eyes somewhat because I was trying to get these signals so perfect. I didn't have to do it that perfect.
Okay. Now, did your when you were going out on these cruises, these missions, did you get up farther into the North Atlantic? I mean, up toward Britain or Iceland or Scandinavia, anything like that?
Not really. We were just out there a few hundred miles and just. Okay. Yeah.
So you were really kind of patrolling sort of that area of the U.S. coastline, in effect. Right,
but it was more honing our skills.
Okay.
Was the assignment.
Mm-hmm.
And one time we were under a simulated attack playing war games, and they told me, he said, you take the lookout back on that back corner, and they had lookouts in every corner, and they said, just watch for torpedoes. I saw a torpedo coming at us. They painted the nose of it a bright orange, but it looked a little lethal, but it went past us. Mm-hmm. But, that was just all simulated.
Okay. So you never had a situation where there were actual Soviet subs out there or you were looking for them?
If there were, there's only a few people that knew about it.
Okay.
Then they'd be talking to the Pentagon.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't know of any. But see, we had 3 with us.
Mm-hmm. That's right, because you're helping
Right.
you train,
Right.
that kind of thing. Okay. Now, did you go into any ports other than Norfolk? Did you?
New York City, right in front of the big one.
Okay, and the statue,
Yes.
yeah.
And then we went down the St. Lawrence Seaway to Quebec. I remember as a rookie sailor, I knew in the morning we'd be kind of in the Seaway, and I went outside there, and it was just beautiful. I looked up the banks of the St. Lawrence Seaway, and it was all these little farms, just perfectly manicured. I thought we were pulled into Europe or something.
Mm-hmm.
It was so neat. But that was all those little French farms. And then we went into Quebec City, and I remember there the tide was 19 feet. So sometimes the gangplank was like this, and other times it was like that.
All right.
And then we were there I don't know if it was our 4th of July or their 4th of July, but we did a fireworks thing right off the deck.
Mm-hmm.
That was kind of nice being right on there. But anyway,
All right.
Quebec City was nice.
Did you get to go ashore there?
Oh yeah, yeah. We had liberty. We were taking over things in the city there for a while and checking it out. It was wonderful.
Okay. All right. Now, did you go down to the Caribbean or just stay in the Atlantic?
No, I was just in Atlantic. Yeah.
Okay.
New York a couple of times. Pier 85. That's where the big liners would pull in. It was interesting in New York City. The bow of the ship looked like it was 20 feet from the street. But that means right off the street it has to be 30 or 40 feet deep. But it was like you park your car and here's this thing right staring you right in the face.
Mm-hmm. All right. So how long did you spend on that ship?
The whole duration, 2 years.
Okay. And are there other particular things that happen that kind of stand out in your memory, or aspects of living on that ship that kind of stand out for you?
Well, one thing was interesting. I learned electronic navigation, but then I was learning to navigate by the stars. And I thought, how does that work? But it works. You can do it.
Mm-hmm.
I can show you how to do it.
Yeah, well, they've been doing it for a few thousand years. So,
yes.
Yeah.
And well, it's interesting. And they had all the Navy pilots learn that. Then they stopped it for a while. Then they thought, no, this is too nice. So they put them all back on it. So they're all back learning that again.
Okay. And then you were also learning the LORAN system?
Yes.
Okay. And did they do that on the ship?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Long range navigation. That's LORAN. Yes.
Right.
Oh, yeah. And it was interesting. When I got out of the Navy, I started at Grand Rapids Junior College, and I was at a speech class. And I never thought about giving a speech. And I was very awkward. First time I got up there, I said, hey, I'm striking out here, you know. Then the next speech, he said, to describe how you do something. So then I got my maps out, and I described how electronic navigation works. And the signal's gone off here, and the signal's gone off here, and they crisscross out in the water, and you pick up the numbers and so forth. But I did really well on that second speech.
Mm-hmm. All right.
So I'm more hands-on.
Okay. And about when you're on duty and so forth, about how many people are you working with, or who is in the same physical space with you?
Out on the bridge, there were probably 4 or 5 with the captain. Back there in the pilot house, there's a helm. Well, when you're out at sea, when there's no oncoming traffic and no curbs to worry about, then they teach seamen how to helm the ship.
Right.
So a lot of these guys, and then, you know, when one was ready to be qualified, they get myself or another guy, and we would just stand behind them and see how they could steady up and whatever, and then they were qualified.
Mm-hmm.
So that was interesting, these guys being trained, and that was nice for them because they were usually down in the deck, and they'd come up 4 hours on watch and really getting involved, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. When I was getting close to getting out, I was a third-class petty officer, so I had guys under me, And it was interesting. My brother's nickname was Goose, like the goose. I don't know how he got that mixed up, or last name or whatever. So when I got on the ship, I'm walking through the ship, and some guy over here said, "Hello, Goose. Hello, Goose." I said, "What's going on?" They thought I was him. So I just took that name, you know. But anyway, so when you're ready to get out, they call it, "You're getting short." They said, "Goose is getting short." So he thinks my attitude's going to change, and I'm going to give everybody freebies, you know. And they said, "Oh, you're so gung-ho, you're just going to go someplace else and sign up." I said, "No, I'm not." I said, "You're going to see my smoke when I go." But I said, "But you're going to keep doing what you're supposed to be responsible for, you know."
All right. So the guys that were working for you, they thought you'd lighten up on them.
Oh, sure. But lighten up means not do nothing.
Yeah, yeah. All right. But basically, you had your own plan at that point. What were you going to do when you got out?
I had football in my heart, but I didn't play in high school. So I was always thinking about that. So when I got home, I had a little bit of Navy cash. I said, "Mom, there's a red motorcycle for sale in Standill. It is beautiful." And she was about this tall. She turned on me. She says, "You can take your money and go buy that motorcycle, or you can save your money, go to college, and play college football." She changed the whole equation, and that's what I did.
Okay. So you got to play football at the junior college?
Yes, and then I was good enough to get a scholarship to another school in Illinois, so that paid for my education.
Very good. And what kind of work did you go into after that?
I thought, well, I had some offers to try professional football, but I was running on a 95% knee. And so I ended up in a Canadian camp, and my knee went out. So then I said, okay, now I have to go back to Grand Rapids, have surgery, and get a real job. So I wanted to get into sales, and I thought the most challenging sales would be doctors. So I became a pharmaceutical rep for Southern Michigan. So that was my first real job.
Okay. All right. Now, you also have done a certain amount of studying of the history of the ship you were on and the antecedents. So remind us, so the aircraft carrier that you were actually serving on, what was that?
Okay, the name of it was a USS Randolph. And I couldn't understand why they would call an aircraft carrier the Randolph. To me, in my immature mind, I thought it'd be like calling it Scooby-Doo. So I started researching it. Then when I researched it, it went back to Peyton Randolph, who was the first president of the Continental Congress. So there was a president there. So then I start studying the Continental Congress, and which leads to this flag. This is from 1776. This part is still British, but we have the 13 stripes for the 13 colonies, but we're still working on getting our divorce from the Brits. And this is where Peyton Randolph was the president of the First Continental Congress. And by the way, the day that they started was September 5th, exactly 250 years from today.
So what was the first, U.S. Navy ships often repeat the same names. What was the original Randolph?
The original Randolph, so the Continental Congress getting themselves together, and they said, okay, we need a military, we need a Navy. So they start building these 32-gun, but they're cannons, these wooden warships. So, and one of them was the USS Randolph. And the USS Randolph got in a fight with the British, and the British ships of that type had double the cannons. They had two layers, so they had 64 cannons. So obviously they blew that Randolph out of the water, and it was a loss of 311 men went down. And then, but just previous to that, when the Randolph was out in the Atlantic, the mast broke off, and that had to go back in, and that date was 3/11 of I'm not sure what year it was, but that had to go back into North Carolina to get that repaired. So
Yeah. All right. So the 311 thing keeps showing up.
it does, yeah.
All right. Now, the Randolph that you were on, when was that built?
It was built in 1940, probably 43. It was number 15, so it was the 15 of those models. But we were putting out those things as fast as we could.
Right.
And that's why at that, there's Anchorage, south, Ulysses Anchorage, I think
Yeah.
you're familiar with it.
Yeah.
Okay, so we had 200 ships in that anchorage. It was a wonderful thing. We're using the natural formation of the earth to keep our ships safe and not have to check with this country, this country. Can we put 10 ships in your harbor? You know, so that was at Anchorage, and of the 200 ships, about, you know, from 4 to 8 aircraft carriers would be in there. So the Japanese were flying a patrol, and they ran across 200 sitting ducks. So they turned around, went back to Japan, gave that information to them. So they're setting up an attack. They're going to go and attack that fleet, and their prize attacks are the aircraft carriers. So they sent out 27 two-engine bombers, and it was a 10.5-hour flight. And that day was also 311 of 45. So, but back, what the Japanese did not understand is the power of the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and the power of praying moms and dads and kids that all the military comes back home. They didn't understand that. They didn't understand the idea of a God with an empty tomb. It's way over their head. But their power, their God was the emperor. So that these 27 planes are coming at us, but they didn't understand the power of the prayers of all the Americans. And so I read the accounts of what was going on with those 27 planes, and it said this many of them had electrical problems, this many of them had fuel problems, this many had this, and this, and this. They were falling off like flies, and only 3 of them, and out of 27, made it down to that anchorage where all those ships were. And 1 was shot down, and it was late at night. It was dark. The pilot was tired, 10.5 hours. And their goal is to suicide dive bomb the aircraft carriers. But he saw a bunch of lights. He thought it was an aircraft carrier, so he took his life and it was 2 crew with him. And they dove into those lights. It was a baseball diamond. Sailors were playing baseball at night. So there's 1 plane left, and he turned around and he come back, and he dove right into the Randolph, the back deck of the Randolph. And there was a lot of casualties, but up in front, there were hundreds of sailors watching a movie. And so the casualties were minimized in the back there. So they fixed up that ship, modernized it, put an angled deck on it, and so then 14, 15 years later, it was Brother Ken was on it, and then I was on it.
All right. And you brought the other flag, you brought a second flag here with you.
Oh, yes. And this one is from 1960, with 48 star flags. This was just before Alaska and Hawaii. And this actual flag was in line and this is the size flag that they fly on the aircraft carriers.
Right. Yeah. And so in that time, you're in the Navy between the very end of 58 and the end of 1960. And in that time, we add Alaska and Hawaii.
Exactly.
And
then it's time for 50.
Yeah, there you go.
Yes.
All right. I guess looking back a little bit on, again, thinking back to your actual time in the Navy, again, is there anything else, other stories that you want to bring
I
in
could
here?
Obviously, my dad was in the Navy, and he had 4 sons that were in the Navy and 1 son who went in the paratroopers. Now, the son that went into the paratrooper, us brothers, we'd be talking about the Navy stuff, but he didn't say much conversation at all about. So one time I said to him, I said, what was it like on your first jump? Because I was thinking, well, I think I have a little bit of fear. And I said, what was it like on your first jump when you went out that plane? And so he said, well, he said, when I got to the door, I was a few seconds late, and the sergeant booted me in the rear end and pushed me out the door. And he says, I woke up on the ground with a sore hip. They wear their canteens on the hip, their basic first water. The canteen was smashed like a pancake. So what happened, what happened, he got into there's different airstreams coming out, different speeds. You got to get away from the plane to get in the right. But he was spun around, and his body banged into something on the back of the plane with his hip. He said, I had a sore hip. So, and he woke up on the ground. He was knocked out all the way down. And I said, well, did you tell anybody? He says, no. He says, in those days, he said, you just check yourself out. If you're okay, you take off running. I thought that was an unusual. I said, when you got home, did you tell mom and dad about it? He said, no. So I drew it out of him.
All right. Now, did he deploy overseas anywhere? Or did
Yeah, he was in the 50s in Germany.
Okay.
101st Airborne.
You know, so did you get? You mentioned that you had decided right away you weren't going to stay in the Navy.
Right.
Did they make any effort to encourage you to reenlist?
Not too much. There probably was the manpower. With my brother, the paratrooper, they made a big effort. I mean, he would have got promoted and cash, and his best buddy stayed in, and he actually became a general. And when my brother was down in Indiana, he came to visit him. So there was a general knocking on his door.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, in that case, thank you very much for taking the time to share your story today.
Thank you for doing what you do. I appreciate it.
All right.